Hi, today we're going to look at solving equations with imaginary solutions. So uh, I want to solve these like we would any other equation using inverse operations. So starting with this first one, subtract 64, x squared equals negative 64. So you want to get the x, the ultimate goal, get the x alone. To start with, get x squared alone. What's the inverse operation of something with an exponent of 2? Well, square root. Square root, the square root exponent, poof, cancels out. You're left with plain old x. On the other side, I have a negative underneath the square root. This is not allowed. If you were to punch this into your calculator would just explode. Come back with an error message. It doesn't happen. So again, we take that -1 out, split that 64 up. Now I can do the square root of 64. My answer there is going to be 8. I can do the square root of -1. I know square root of -1 is I. So whenever you see that, we're going to put an I in place. Now there's one last thing that we're going to do. Um, I'm going to put this plus minus symbol there. Plus minus saying it's going to be both a positive 8i and a negative 8i when I plug it back into my problem. You don't trust me? Let's plug them in and let's test it out, see what happens. If I took positive 8i and I put it back up here, so if I said 8i squared plus 64, when I simplify this left side, it's got to equal 0. So this exponent goes to both of these. 64i squared and 64i squared is the same thing as saying -1. So 64 times -1, isn't that just -64? And there is a positive 64 giving you that 0. So the positive 8i works. What if I were to put in a negative sign in front? Well, let's distribute that exponent to the negative as well, giving us a positive 64 I squared. I squared is -1 times that 64. I no longer need that plus. Again, still giving us -64. Still have the positive 64. Still going to give us 0. So when we take the square root of something, you're going to get both a positive and a negative answer. Because what two numbers multiplied together give me 64? 8 times 8, or -8 times -8. So something to keep in mind there. Positive, negative. Okay, next. We'll go by quicker with these ones. So I want to get x squared alone. Subtract 100. Divide by 4. All this, nothing new. Inverse operation of an exponent. We're going to take a root or a radical. The radical and the exponent cancel out. We are left with square root of -25, but I want to break that up and say negative square root of -1, square root of 25. X equals 25 is going to give us 5. The square root of -1 is going to give us I, and in front, plus minus. And one last one. Minus 10 divided by 2. So inverse operations here. One last inverse. Take the radical. We're left with x equals, we know it's going to be a plus or minus. I want to split this up. I want to split this up into 2, so we'll say -1. We'll say 5. The 5 I can't do anything with, so we're just going to leave that. The only thing we can simplify is this I. So x equals plus minus I, that radical 5. The radical is always at the end of the equations. And that is solving equations with imaginary solutions.